Hello, welcome back to Forza Horizon 5, where today I'm doing a bit of Forza Science, where I'm going to look at the turbocharger and the supercharger. It's a debate that's been going on for many years, but I'm going to have a look and decide which is the better option in terms of performance. Let's have a look at the turbocharger and supercharger in technical details before we get on with this. Okay, so what both of these devices are supposed to do is increase the air-to-fuel ratio in an engine. So what the turbocharger does is it gets its air from the exhaust. Now that means the pressure has to build up to cause this turbine spin, and that is where turbo lag comes from. Anyway, what that does is it then spins the turbine, that forces air into this intake, and what that does is it increases the fuel to air ratio. So that means more power. And let's move on to the supercharger. As I told you, the supercharger is the same sort of job. However, this is a bit different because it's got a drive pulley. Now this comes off the engine. So what that does is it spins a little turbine in here. That draws in air and then sort of forces it into the engine. So it's been compressed. So that means it does the same sort of thing as a turbo, more air, more fuel, more power. Okay? So that's technical details done. Now let me introduce you to the car we'll be using. Now this is it, the AMG Hammer. I could have gone with something like a Honda Integra or a Corvette. However, this thing is a 6-litre naturally aspirated V8. This is sort of a German muscle car, if you like. However, unlike a muscle car, it should be pretty good on the track. So here's the naturally aspirated version going round. Now this Mercedes 6-litre V8 has been tuned by AMG to produce 387 brake horsepower, so that is a lot from a naturally aspirated engine. So we have a pretty good benchmark. Anyway, this is very well built. It should handle very well on the track. Front engine, rear-wheel drive, I'd say pretty decent weight distribution. So there you go. I'd say that this is a perfect recipe for a very well handling car. Okay, so we've just done the final bend and we're heading over towards the finish line. It's the post just before the event and across the line in 1 minute 50. Now here is the supercharger. Now I did upgrade it to the race supercharger. That gives me 488 horsepower to use for this test, and that's a good amount. Now this being fueled by the engine means that the supercharger has constant boost, unlike the turbo, so it should be pretty good on the straights and the corners. But will the turbo be any better? We'll have to find out in the next running, but it seems to be doing well so far. I have spoken too soon, it is drifting out, but I've recovered it, thank God. Okay, let's hope nothing else happens. Ooh, tail stepping out, I'm off, and back on the road, thank goodness. Okay, so we've just done the final corner again. Remember, the finish line is the telegraph pole just before the event point, and across the line. Now here is the car with twin turbos. Now unfortunately I had to only upgrade the turbos to sport turbos, which to keep it fair. However, the sport turbos actually produce 504 horsepower. That's a considerable amount over the supercharger. But remember, the turbos only provide boost once the exhaust gases reach a certain pressure, and that's better for the corners, so when it comes out of the corner you get more boost. Okay, so that was much neater through there, and here is the bit where I went off in the supercharged car, and it's actually dealing with it very nicely. Okay, now let's go into the final straight. Okay, so we are approaching the final straight. The supercharged car did a 113 around this smaller circuit. Now, let's see how well this do. Ooh. Okay, so this next test is launch. How quickly can the car get off the line? Now, rule for this test, you're not allowed to use launch control, because that means the car's wheels won't spin, and the car didn't have launch control when it left the factory. Okay, so let's see which car can leave the longest skid mark on the tarmac. Go. Very good. Okay, so it leads right to the middle of the white Horizon Festival thing. Here is the supercharger. Much longer skid burnout. That was a bit longer, right to the black banner. Very, very long. Okay, now here's twin turbos. And same length, so that was a bit pointless. But now let's move on to speed. Okay, so I clocked the top speed of the stock Mercedes at 197 miles an hour. Now, the important thing with this car is it's got a 4-speed gearbox. Now that may not seem the right recipe for a fast car, but the gear ratios are very long. As you can see, this car is hitting 200 miles an hour easily. This is the supercharged car and we are approaching the downhill. Come on, and 212 and we hit a traffic car. Now I did that run again and we hit 212 as well. Now let's see how the twin turbo gets on. Okay, so here comes the twin turbo Mercedes AMG Hammer. Such a cool name, I love it. Anyway, we are approaching 200 miles an hour and it's doing pretty well. I'm not expecting too much of a difference in speed. The gearbox should limit the top speed. Now we're approaching the downhill. 13, 14, 15. We have reached top speed at 215 miles an hour. That's impressive. And that gives us a good conclusion that turbochargers are better. In fact, they are more popular than the supercharger because they don't really use fuel and therefore they are more efficient. And that will be me on. So there you are. The turbocharger really does trump the supercharger in terms of performance and in the technical department. So there you are. If you want the best aspiration, get a turbo. Thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed making this video. If you want to see something like this in the future, please subscribe. Goodbye.